Okay, here we go. There you go. Good morning, everybody. That song, let me put my horn away. That song is called Entry of the Gladiators, and it's also known as Thunder and Blazes. That song was written in 1897 by a Czech composer named Julius Fusik. And that is the theme song of the Barnum and Bailey Circus. They used to play that when the clowns came into the ring. And it's a memorable song. I don't know if you'd ever hear it any other place because that circus is out of business. And I thought I'd play it for you this morning as a little treat and a little bit of uniqueness, because think about this. Where the hell are you going to go on the internet or on TV and you're expecting to see an interview show with a very famous person? I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Mike. And the interviewer comes on and he plays that goddamn piece. I'll tell you where you're going to go. It's the only place you can go, and that's right here, Life After Scientology, and I'm Ron Miscavige. I'm your host. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Before we get into anything else, we have a Patreon I'd like to announce. Christine Grain, $2. Thank you very much, Christina. Oh, Christina, not Christine. Christina, thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. And that, by the way, is how we, have a little way to cover some of our expenditures for doing the show. You can become a patron. And the nice thing about it is this. These shows really are enlightening and they're educational. And it's good for you to watch it. But if you want to become part of it and actually do something about it, this is a simple way to do it. Become a patron where you contribute so much money, whether it's $1 or $2 or $5 or $100, doesn't matter. You're doing something about it, and immediately you feel a little bit better because, hey, I see this, I'm doing something about it. The other thing you can do about it is this. Get many more people to subscribe to this show so we can gain more viewership, more people get enlightened, the less chances of people getting hurt by this group, meaning the Church of Scientology. So, okay, that's the business out of the way. And now, as I promised in the past, and I'm coming through with the promise today, and with his wonderful cooperation, actually an old friend of mine, Mike Rinder, and he's going to continue on from where he left off the last time, which was about 3 weeks ago. Oh, a little more business, and I'll get into this. Next week is the patrons only show. So all you patrons out there, we'll email you a link so you can tune in, and I think we take a certain number of people, and then people can call in and talk to me, and we have a little rap session here, which would be great. Anyway, getting back to the show, please welcome Mike Rinder. Good morning, Mike.
Hi there, Ron. Nice to see you again.
I'm sorry, I missed that last thing you just said.
I said it's nice to see you again.
Yes, it's nice to see you too. And geez, I mentioned in the past, but I'll mention it again. I know Mike since I think 1976 or 78.
No, earlier than that, buddy. 71.
Oh, that's right.
71 or 73. I can't remember which it was.
I had my family over. It must have been in 73, right?
Yeah.
And we met at St. Hill, England, and gone over some memories. And one of them, which is a stupid little memory, but it worth bringing up. Outside of Qual, or it was the HCC, there was a log that was split in half, and they had this log on the ground, and that's where we used to sit when you'd wait for a session. Remember that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
smoke. Everybody sat there and smoked.
I know. I know. And then that was the thing to do. That was the
Absolutely.
thing to do.
You're right.
I don't know. Did auditors smoke it? They didn't smoke in session, though, did they?
No.
I don't remember that ever.
No.
But anyway, getting into the meat of the interview, last week we ended off where, not last week, I guess it was about four weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
We ended off where you described how you rose to the top of the Scientology totem pole. Great interview. And then we stopped short because we didn't have enough time as to how the church exactly did get tax exemption. And I really would like this to be the kickoff for this show, which is going to be,
Right.
because this is a memorable experience that people should keep in mind when you have a real bad group, an evil group, what they will do to resort to get their way and continue to get their way. And the only way we're going to stop this is if we get more and more and more people involved. And we're talking about people in its position of power, like a senator or some member of the House of Representatives or a judge, the mayor of your town. This is really, if you know of anybody, get them to tune in and watch this show. Actually, watch any of our shows. But this is going to be very important to get enlightened on. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Mike. And I'd like to kick it off with, like, who ran the capers that they did? Anyway, whatever you want to do is okay with me, though. All right?
Okay. Let's just start with a fundamental principle, Ron, that applies to the subject of tax exemption. The reason organizations are granted exemption is because the theory is that they provide a public benefit. In other words, the government would otherwise have to provide what these organizations provide. And so therefore, it would be ridiculous to tax them for doing a service that effectively the government will have to do. And when you think about this, you go, okay, like education, or helping the homeless, or things that are the typical charitable activities of organizations that qualify them for tax exempt status. And this is a very important point, because short of providing that sort of service to the general public, not just to their members, but to society at large, no organization should have tax exempt status. And when you look at Scientology and what Scientology does as far as charitable activities, they're virtually zero. They make a show of doing things that are charitable. They make a lot of videos. They do photo ops with people in yellow t-shirts pretending that they are helping out on disaster relief, or that they're, doing some other form of charitable work. But as you know from having been at Gold, those things are primarily staged for the purpose of showing them to Scientologists to get them to give more money.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
They are not actually services that are provided by Scientology. Okay, so that's one fundamental idea. There's a lot of pieces to unpack about this tax exemption, but here is a second thing. There is this concept that in order to qualify for tax exempt status, you not only have to be charitable, you have to be operated for that purpose. You can't just say that you're saving animals and then have a little animal shelter and have zillions of dollars for something else and aren't actually spending your money, but are just collecting it and not paying taxes. So you have to be operated primarily for the purpose for which you state that you're operating. The second thing is that you have to operate within what is called public policy. And public policy is a very vague sort of legal term that basically means within the norms of what's expected and acceptable in society. And the third thing is you can't be committing illegal acts. You can't be a charitable exempt organization and also be committing acts that are in violation of the law.
Right.
Like the classic example of this is you can't start up a religion saying, I worship heroin, and then be providing and selling heroin for people to inject in themselves and claim that you're protected as a religion and therefore should have charitable status.
You got it. Right.
Because that's a felony.
Yeah.
The final thing is you can't have what's called innuement. And innuement means private, like the benefit of an individual from something that is supposed to be for the benefit of the people at large. You can't have an individual profiting from a charitable organization.
Right.
And a lot of people raise this issue and say, well, David is engaged in innuement because he lives like a king and blah, blah, blah. No, not according to the IRS. The IRS standards for the level of extravagance for religions is ridiculous. Creflo Dollar and a bunch of these big evangelical Christian ministers live in $10 million homes and have private jets, some of them more than one, and that's acceptable to the IRS.
Wow.
So Dave's standard of living is not beyond what is allowable by the IRS. Morally, it's a very different question, because the difference here is everybody in the C organization is, quote, equal. And everybody in the C organization lives on 50 or 75 or 100 or $0 a week, living in a communal dorms and eating communally with commissary style food. And everybody in the Sea Org is like that, except Dave.
Right.
He has a completely different lifestyle. John loves shoes and hand-tailored suits and shirts and a personal chef and a personal hairdresser and a personal this and a personal that. All of that in the Scientology world is immoral. Scientologists would call that unethical.
Right.
But in the view of the IRS, that is not. So let's put that aside. Let's go back to what the two big issues are with respect to Scientology's tax-exempt status. One, they provide no public benefit. The benefit of Scientology is for Scientology exclusively and only. It is not designed to be a congregation of people who come together to conduct, food drives for the homeless, et cetera, et cetera. It's all, what are we going to get for ourselves and how are we going to keep our world inside the bubble protected from the outside world?
Right.
That's a fairly esoteric thing, and part of the problem with revoking the tax-exempt status at this point is because there is law in the United States called the First Amendment to the Constitution. And that First Amendment has been interpreted over the years to make it virtually impossible for government agencies or courts to interfere with the activities of a religion. This is another whole topic, which is the legal system in the United States, unfortunately, favors he who has the money. If you have a lot of money and can hire the best and largest number of lawyers, you tend to succeed. And even though the First Amendment and the entire Constitution and the Bill of Rights was intended to protect the individual against the overreaching of the state, the First Amendment, the law that has been developed in the First Amendment, favors the churches, the organizations,
Right.
because they've always been the ones with the money. The little individual parishioner of any church trying to fight the mother church or the body of the church has routinely come up short, and the law therefore favors the church entity itself. And beyond that, the law favors the idea that courts may not try and interpret religious scripture, and that government agencies may not intercede and try and tell churches how to do their business and what they should do and how they should conduct themselves. And this is very, it's settled law. And it makes it very hard for any government agency or court even to take on a subject like Scientology. Because Scientology cleverly over the years has built its religious status and calls the writings of L. Ron Hubbard its scripture.
Oh boy.
All terminology which really doesn't have anything to do with the subject of Scientology. I mean, if you go back to what Hubbard said, which is what Scientology is supposed to be, it doesn't have shit to do with that. Nothing. But cleverly, this has been used as a way of positioning Scientology as a church, as religious, with scriptures, with belief systems, with this and that, because that affords enormous protection in the court system. Enormous. And enormous protection from government oversight and government intrusion. So here we have Scientology that attained tax-exempt status in 1993. How did that come about? Because for decades prior to that, the IRS had refused to grant Scientology exempt status. In the 70s, there was a court case, and the courts had determined that L. Ron Hubbard was, in fact, inuring from the proceeds of Scientology, that he was receiving excess amounts of money, that it was actually a profit center for him. There were various other issues that had come up, and this became sort of the battle of the bold as far as Scientology was concerned.
Mike, excuse me 1 second. You say they took it away. They must have had tax exemption as a religion before then. Is that right?
Yes. You effectively, when you apply, you effectively have it unless it's proven otherwise.
I got
All
it.
you have to do is basically make the right application. And then if there is something that comes up, you can have it revoked or denied, or you can appeal it, or they can tell you, you're going to have to provide more information, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, for a while, a number of churches of Scientology in the United States had tax-exempt status from the IRS. And they were different. Different ones had different things. The Church of Scientology had a Hawaii had a different status than the Church of Scientology of California, for example.
Okay.
Anyway, this all gets very complicated, and I don't want to get too much into the weight about this, Ron, but that's a great question, because, yes, it was taken away.
Yeah.
But not only was it taken away in the 70s, here's the real story of this exemption. When L. Ron Hubbard died, his will says that his estate can only be dispersed to a tax-exempt Scientology organization. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Okay. That tax-exempt Scientology organization that his assets and $400 million or whatever was supposed to be dispersed to was created in 1982. It's called the Church of Spiritual Technology, CST.
Right, CST, yeah.
That was created as the vessel for the estate of L. Ron Hubbard to transfer into. But L. Ron Hubbard's will said it could only be transferred if the organization had exemption.
I got it.
Okay, so there was a massive corporate reorganization that happened in 1982 in order to try to get Scientology organizations into a form and a structure that would be able to be granted tax exempt status, because the Church of Scientology of California had it denied. There was all sorts of litigation. It was a real messy setup. It just sort of grown higgledy-piggledy, and nobody had paid attention to it. So a bunch of lawyers and Lyman Spurlock and me and Larry Brennan and a few other people did this whole sort out of the Scientology corporate structure, creating the Church of Scientology International, Church of Spiritual Technology, Religious Technology Center, and all of the individual churches of Scientology around the world. The purpose of that was to put us into a position where it would be even possible to get tax exempt status. The first thing that had to happen was CST had to be granted exemption. CST was a newly formed organization. It was totally clean. It didn't have any history of giving money to anybody. It didn't have anything. And a lot of work was done to make an application for CST to be granted tax exempt status. The IRS denied it, and CST sued in federal court. That decision, when finally it was decided, the court also said that the Church of Spiritual Technology would not qualify for tax exempt status. It said that it may well be religious, and it wasn't going to get into whether it was a religious organization or not, but that its activities did not qualify it to be a tax exempt organization.
I got it.
That happened in 1992, I think, shortly before the exemption.
Wow.
Similarly, there was a big court case that was done, which is known as Hernandez. And it was a court case about what it was a way around this issue of whether the IRS would grant exemption by trying to force the courts to allow Scientologists to deduct for their donations to Scientology for services. And it was done on the basis that it would be discriminatory to not allow them, because Catholics are allowed to donate to their church and deduct it, and Jews are allowed to donate to their church and deduct it, etc., etc. So this case went on for years, and there were actually hundreds of different cases, but there was one that was taken as the example case, which was Hernandez. This case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court and had a full hearing in front of the full panel of 9 judges, and a decision which said, nope, you do not qualify for the ability to deduct your donations, because the transaction that you make when you buy auditing and training is quid pro quo. It is not charitable. You are paying for something that you are getting something in return, which is what quid pro quo means.
Yeah. Something for something. Is that it?
And the United States Supreme Court said donations, quote, to Scientology organization for auditing and training are not deductible. That decision was in 1989. Those two decisions and a couple of others basically made it impossible to get tax-exempt status. So how did it happen? Resorting to what L. Ron Hubbard says is the way you deal with situations like this. Attack.
Yep.
Never defend, always attack. And don't attack organizations, attack individuals. Find individuals and attack the individuals. And that is exactly what was done, Ron.
Wow.
Exactly. Private investigators were hired to investigate the officials in the IRS and individual IRS agents. Freedom magazine was published routinely with exposés about individual IRS agents with their pictures on the cover. Hundreds, actually more than the 2,000 lawsuits were filed by individual Scientologists claiming individual discrimination, to the point where the IRS was being consumed with this war against Scientology. And actually, it was Scientology's war on the IRS as opposed to the other way around.
I see that.
And that was what happened very deliberately and very precisely, that then David and Marty went to the IRS in DC and walked into 1111 Constitution Avenue and said, "We want to see the commissioner." And ultimately, that did happen. They did have a meeting with Fred Goldberg.
No, wait a minute. Mike, come on. I heard the story that they walked in and they saw him right away. Is that not true?
No. You can't do that. Like, here's what happens when I've been there many times. Here's what happens when you walk into the IRS. First of all, you go through metal detectors and all sorts of bullshit and security and this and that. And then you get to a window like you're at a train station.
Right.
"Hi, I'd like to talk to blah, blah." And, you know, the little lady sitting down there is like, "Oh, yeah, right. Some guy that just walked in off the street, I'm going to schedule an appointment with the commissioner of the IRS." Yeah, right. No, what happened was the lady said, "Do you have an appointment?" "No, we don't." "Well, who are you here to see?" "Fred Goldberg." "I'm sorry, you can't just walk in here and see Fred Goldberg." And Dave said, "Well, tell him that David Miscavige from the Church of Scientology is here to see him. Here's my phone number. We should meet." And the lady said, "I'll take your message," and they left. And then there was a call, and then he did go meet.
Wow.
Dave and Marty did go meet. And Fred said, famously, "If we resolve the issues of your exempt status, can you turn off the faucet?" And what he was referring to was the Freedom magazines, the lawsuits, the private investigators, all the activities that were being done to put pressure on the IRS. Full-page ads in USA Today. I mean, who runs full-page ads in USA Today attacking the IRS for random things? Like, why did you audit Lucy? Everybody loves Lucy except the IRS. That was a famous one.
I remember that one.
And these were effective. Now, this is where push comes to shove, Ron, because I was then involved in a bunch of those meetings because Fred Goldberg formed a committee to address the issue of Scientology exempt status. And it was run by the Deputy Commissioner for Exempt Organizations, John Burke, and a number of other IRS officials. And they were charged with, basically by Fred Goldberg, sort this mess out. But it was kind of like, sort it out and you know how it's supposed to end. And John Burke was soon to retire. So it was no skin off his teeth what happened one way or the other. His career was over at the IRS. He'd been there forever and his career was over. This had to be accomplished in the face of actually two Supreme Court decisions and the Court of Claims decisions about the Church of Spiritual Technology that said, no dice, you're not exempt, you cannot qualify for tax exempt status. How is this possible? How is this possible? Because, look, Hubbard may be a mad genius and an evil genius, but some of the stuff that he says actually works.
I know.
Threatening the IRS, believe it or not, worked.
Yeah.
It resulted in an exemption in the face. That U.S. Supreme Court decision still exists to this day. It has not been overturned.
Wow. Actually, I'll tell you something.
The decision still exists today. It has not been overturned.
Yeah.
But then, listen to this. Here's the final point. The crazy, crazy. None of these things that were done that resulted in tax-exempt status, the ads, the private investigators, the smear campaigns, none of those things should ever be something that an exempt organization spends its money on, because those things are a violation of public policy.
Right.
The very things that were done that got the tax exempt status is the exact reason why Scientology should not have tax exempt status. It's crazy.
Wow. I'll tell you, Mike, it's just, I'd almost want you to say that again, just for our viewership, because it is the point of points, isn't it?
Yeah, it's they did things that caused the IRS to capitulate in the face of two U.S. Supreme Court decisions and a Court of Claims decision that said exactly the opposite to what the IRS ultimately did. And the things that they did are the exact reasons why Scientology should not have exempt status. And when I say they, I was involved in this.
Yeah.
Like they say they now, looking in hindsight, but I was involved in all this stuff. Like Freedom Magazine came under me. Stacy Brooks Young, Bob Minton's ex, was in charge of Freedom Magazine when we were putting out all of those things with the IRS agents on the front cover.
Wow.
And so this is a really bizarre state of affairs at this point. And you mentioned at the beginning about, where are the congressmen, or reach out to your congressmen and senators. This is where this needs to be heard.
Yeah.
Congressmen, senators, they should be hearing this. Do you know that this $3+ billion organization has a lot of money there available to collect? It could build the wall. The Scientology's unpaid taxes or taxes from Scientology could be funding the Special Olympics for the next 10,000 years.
And then they truly would be a religion, right?
There you go. Now, if they were funding the Special Olympics, then they may qualify for being a charitable organization.
Well, wait,
so,
there is one public benefit, Mike, and you stand corrected on this. I'd like to bring it up, okay?
I'm waiting for this.
No, I'm not. No, serious. They fuck people over. That's a benefit of sports to the public. I don't know how, but they do abuse people.
Yeah, that's a real public benefit, Ron. Yeah. That's great.
Joke.
Anyway,
for you people who don't have a sense of humor, I just told a joke, all right?
This is hard to articulate in very simple terms without being inaccurate. And I know that some of the things that I have are debatable. If I had a law professor here or someone that's a specialist in tax exempt law or etc., etc. They may quibble with the sort of exactitude with which I have said things, but I'm telling you, in overview, this is 100% accurate. And this is 100% important. And this is the big picture of why Leah and I have spent so much time and keep repeating over and over, look, the tax-exempt status of Scientology is what needs to be addressed, because there is another thing that goes along with exemption. You're basically free from any oversight. The government can no longer inquire as to where you're spending the money. There is no ability for the IRS to even audit a religious organization. There is this thing called the Church Audit Procedures Act, which made it virtually impossible for the IRS to audit a religion. Now, in other sensible countries, like Britain, the test for exemption is what's called the public benefit test. You have to prove that you are actually providing a public benefit. And Scientology could not do that. We tried. Your son and I went to the UK with Tom Cruise to visit with Tony Blair's advisors, and then the Charity Commission, and brought the Charity Commission to St. Hill and did everything we possibly could to convince them that Scientology provided a public benefit. They didn't buy it. And beyond that, in the United Kingdom, once you have charitable status there, you are required to provide your financials to the Charity Commission.
Wow.
So that they can be sure you're not absconding with people's funds when they have given it to you in good faith.
Boy, that is very sane, isn't it?
It is totally sane. It's the exact opposite in the United States.
Wow.
When you become a charitable religious organization, you're free and clear. There's no way that they have no oversight anymore. You don't have to report anything. You don't have to provide any sort of financial information at all if you do not have what's called unrelated business income. That's it.
Wow.
That's the only requirement that you have.
Well, I'll tell you, this is an education, man. This is.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy, Ron.
It's hard to understand because it is crazy.
I know. This is a scam in full view, a playing of the system in full view of the world, and it's just goes on and nobody is doing anything about it.
Yeah, and the people who could do something about it don't have the gumption nor the inclination, because most politicians, I say most, it can't be all of them. God forbid if we're all of them. But most of them, the only thing they're concerned about is saying what people want to hear so they can get voted into office again. And
That's exactly right.
There's very, very few who would do something about it. They have a hell of a time getting the gathering to them. It's just like when this country was started. You know, it was only a handful of people like Thomas Jefferson and Billy Madison and Ben Franklin, you know, that wanted to get away from England and their suppressive treatment of the people. Most people wanted to beg forgiveness of the king. Most people.
I hear you, man. Even Billy Madison. James Madison.
James Madison? No,
it's okay. It's okay. You're exactly right, Ron. But so this brings me to another point, which is the reason Leah and I have been doing the Aftermath show and feel it is so important is we want to change public perception. We want politicians to eventually go, you know, there is nothing unsafe about me taking a position against Scientology having tax-exempt status. I am not going to be vilified for that. I am not going to lose an election because people accuse me of being anti-religious.
Right.
And that is the battle in the PR arena to change the public perception of Scientology. And as that public perception changes, then political perception will change. And as political perception changes, that's ultimately what will bring this reign of horrors to an end.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. You and Leah do a masterful job. I got to tell you, because that takes balls to do what you do, and you do it, and you do it on every show. And I'm sure you'd even do it to a greater extent if you didn't have lawyers looking over your shoulder, wouldn't you? Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get to say a lot of things here when I'm talking to you. Like we did a program about this with a law professor from Boston University, wonderful guy. I wish I could have put the whole thing in there of
I saw that.
discussion.
I know, I saw that, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. But I know that, like on here, we can say anything you want because this is for a public benefit. If anything, I could probably qualify more morally and legally than the church.
Of course you could. You should look into it. What you are doing is an educate. You're not going to qualify as a religious activity, but you may qualify as educational. The Aftermath Foundation has tax-exempt status.
Well, I might just do that because I also have a 4-word philosophy that I live by, and I invite people to live by it. Don't change your religion, and that is help somebody, help something. That works for me.
Love it.
Covers all grounds.
Love it.
Yeah. So anyway, it just this is quite a story. This is not an everyday thing, you know. Or like in my hometown, there was a guy that used to come down the street playing an accordion, and people would go out and give money. You don't see that these days. You don't see people. No, seriously. This is back in the 40s, you know, and everybody pitied him because I don't know what was wrong with them, but they would contribute money to him. But he was providing some entertainment, and you know, where do you see that these days? Where do you see a show like this where we bring things out in the open? Well, I'll tell you right here, Life After Scientology. Get 100,000 more people to watch this, and let's get after these bastards and get the the public opinion change, and that spill over into the political arena and put them out of business. Take away their tax exemption. Then do what you want to do. All right?
Yeah, I don't care about putting Scientology out of business.
No, nor do I.
I don't even think that that's ever going to happen. But I do care about the lack of oversight. I do care about the fact that tax-exempt money is spent on private investigators, on smearing people, on hiring legions of lawyers to attempt to intimidate people into silence.
Yeah.
That stuff should not be happening in this country. It just shouldn't.
And I agree. And that is a good way to segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And we talked about talking about this back over a month ago, and that's the subject of disconnection. And I'd like you to get into it because I'm the effect of it, and you are too. So it's not. We're not talking about, we don't know what the fuck it is, you know.
Yeah. Well, honestly, Ron, I find disconnection in any religious organization to be horrendously painful and damaging. And like we did this whole program about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have a form of disconnection just like Scientology does, called disfellowshipping. I don't believe that. I don't care what your religious beliefs are. I don't believe that a religious organization or someone claiming to be a religious organization should be in the business of breaking up families.
Yeah.
Now, you can argue that. You can argue whether it's proper or appropriate for a belief system to require you to not associate with certain people. I mean, the Mormons have a similar thing. The Orthodox Jews have a similar thing. Here is what is different about Scientology. Two things. One, they deny it. They lie about it. Just like they lie about whether they're pro-gay rights or not. They lie about disconnection. And they say, it doesn't exist like that in Scientology. However, whatever horror story you hear, that's not, that doesn't resemble Scientology. The fuck it doesn't. That's exactly what Scientology does.
Yeah.
But Scientology takes it a step further. It's used as a weapon in Scientology. It is used as a weapon to control people. It is absolutely the case in Scientology that if the organization decides your persona non grata, they will require everybody from your mother, brother, sister, employer, employee, friends, acquaintances, anybody and everybody to disconnect from you. Require it. Now, they say, well, it's all a personal choice. Yeah, and the personal choice is if you don't disconnect, we're going to make everybody else disconnect from you. And so you have these bizarre scenarios of parents with one, and you're very familiar with this, parents with one child who is a Scientologist and the other who is not, being forced to choose which one am I going to remain in communication with, because they can't be in communication with both, because Scientology will not allow that. So I have to choose, do I stick with the Scientology one or do I stick with the non-Scientology one? And that choice is obscene. That is a Sophie's choice. Which child am I going to send to the gas chamber? Which child am I going to have no longer be a part of my family? And it works in all equations of this. Children with parents, children with siblings, siblings with aunts and uncles. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. And this practice of disconnection, I believe, is the single most toxic and reprehensible thing that happens in Scientology. And the number of families and people who have been affected by this is far larger than people in general understand. It is almost universal in families that have multiple members that are or have been in Scientology, to have those families be split apart in some way because of the involvement in Scientology.
Wow.
Just think about that. No, Ron, think about it. Think about any family that you know who is sort of a larger family or has more than, it's not just a single individual, but actually family members involved in Scientology. You go, oh yeah, their son is estranged from them. Oh yeah, they don't speak to their ex-father. Oh yeah, they don't speak to their blah. Oh yeah, they're disconnected from this. Oh yeah. It's not it's not only not uncommon, it is the norm.
Yeah, it is.
And that is horrendous.
I'll tell you, it against all decent thinking people. I don't care whether you're religious or not, but if you have an ounce or maybe 2 ounces of decency in you, you break up a family, you're striking a blow at the building block of society. That's actually like a crime against humanity. This isn't just a light thing where you say, oh, well, Yeah, they had to disconnect their son. Well, that's their choice. Hey, fuck you, man. It's not a choice. You enforce it. You, meaning the Church of Scientology, with your hot and cold running attorneys who, thrive on this. I guess they'll do anything for a buck. They'd sell their mother's eyes, probably. Yeah, that's a crime against humanity as far as I'm concerned. And it's very painful. Like I lost my 2 daughters, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, except for one, and one son. And it's like they've killed them because they're gone. If somebody is dead, there's no way you can talk to them. And this is what's happened with a large number of my family. They're gone from me. And it's the reason I do the show.
Right. And honestly, Scientology's response to that is, well, you chose the path you're on, Ron. You chose to abandon your family. And that...
I say this, because that's what one of their fucking lawyers said to me. Oh, yeah? Well, when I stepped through that door for the first time, if they would have said to me, look, you can do this, but if at any point you change your mind and you would come against us, you're going to lose your whole family. I'd say, hold on. Fuck you, man. I'm not doing this.
Of course. But let's just take it from another perspective, Ron. They have the Stand League and all of these things where they say that they stand for religious freedom and they're the champions of religious freedom and free speech, etc., etc. And that when it comes to someone who is formally a Scientologist, they have no rights, none whatsoever. In the eyes of Scientology, they are dead. They are to be abused. They are to be destroyed utterly if possible. And that is this big lie that my religious belief is I don't want to be a Scientologist. That's my religious belief.
Hey, that's a good one. That's right up there
So,
with the best as far as I'm
how come I don't have the right to have that religious belief in the eyes of Scientology?
It's because L. Ron Hubbard wrote it in policy that you don't. That's why.
Exactly, but they pretend that they're the big champions of freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. We champion everybody else's rights, blah, 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 until you become a ex-Scientologist. Then you're no longer have any rights whatsoever to seek, to assemble, to practice the religion of your choice, nothing.
Wow. Now, let me ask you something, because you've done a lot in this area. I mean, of course, I have too for a little while now, but not as long as you. How many families, just ballpark, would you estimate, have been affected or broken up with this?
Oh, I mean, in the thousands, Ron.
Oh, would you say it's in the thousands?
Yep.
Yeah, these are criminal acts. You know that. They're criminal.
Just think about it, Ron. Just think how many you can think of off the top of your head, and you'll come up with tons of them. Like people that you never even really consider it because it's just such a sort of routine thing that happens.
Yeah.
You don't stop to consider and go, wait a minute. Yeah, it's this person, it's this person, it's that person, it's this
right.
person. Like everybody that I know actually that has ever had any contact with Scientology, that happened to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get people writing to me that, of course, I don't know, because they're writing to me and telling me, well, I was on staff, and then, of course, I come out and I was disconnected. They tell me these stories that, and, for it to go on and on, though, I guess this is, I like to handle things quickly. I like, something has to be done, I want to do it immediately. This is a crusade. We have to persist at, Mike. I think you'll agree 100%.
Oh, I'm not going away.
Oh, I'm not either. I mean, this is my mantra, and I'm going to stay with it until I effect a decent change. And that change would be for them to lose their tax status. I mean, I think that would be the thing that at that point, some of the people who benefit from this, especially the whales, are going to have to say, hey, wait a minute. What was I supporting now that I can't get tax exemption? And if they start looking into it, they might open their eyes for the first fucking time, because right now they accept anything that is said at events as truth with not one shred of evidence. It's just bullshit. It's like Baghdad Bob. You remember that guy that was...
Exactly.
Yeah, we're beating the enemy, and there comes a Marine or a soldier and says, let's go, we're taking you in. On television, you know? Anyway, so that's... Okay, boy, I think we've covered the subject pretty good. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, great. Good time. Look at that. We're like getting our timing down.
Listen, my studio clock is run by a battery. You know, this is a real high-class operation. The fucking battery ran out today, just as we started the show. And I don't have a battery in charge to go and replace it. So
someone give Ron $2 so he can buy a new battery.
Yeah. Quick, I want to go to the dollar store and get some new batteries. Okay, Sean is signaling me. Go on, Sean.
Hey guys, hey, we had two things. Karen Cookson for $40. That'll buy a lot of batteries. She wanted to know what Mike thought about the bobblehead.
Oh, Mike.
Oh, I love it. I think it's good fun, and it's a good way of raising awareness of the Aftermath Foundation and collecting, further donations for the Aftermath Foundation, because all of the proceeds from that thing go to the Aftermath Foundation. Mark Hadley isn't making a penny out of it. I'm not making a penny out of it. It is just some, laugh in the face of the bully and make lemonade out of the lemon.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad it was brought up, because as soon as I saw it, I wanted to buy it, and then for one reason or another, I didn't. So when I go home, I'm just going to order one immediately. And I'm going to tell you, Mike, it's a pretty damn good replica of you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Actually, Henley did a great job with that. He organized the whole thing. He was the one that reached out to me and said, hey, I saw this video. We got to do a bobblehead. I know where to get them made. I know how to do this. Let's try it out. And, when it took a few months of back and forth to China, and those things are all hand painted.
It's fabulous, man. I tell you, I love it. Yeah, there it is.
I got it on the screen.
Yeah, and all of you out there, okay, get your bobblehead. And then you can use that as a ventriloquist thing, say, well, Mike, what do you think? Oh, I think they should, shake it a little bit so you pretend like it's talking.
And Ron, just in case people don't understand, but right above there, you can see just above on the screen that I'm looking at, there is the bobblehead that appeared in the Scientology video. And it was, one of Dave's bright ideas, no doubt, to make fun of me and say that I'm just I bobble my head in agreement with Leah for all things that she ever says, blah, 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 blah. And so seeing that was what sparked the idea of creating the bobblehead. It wasn't simply I want to have a bobblehead of myself out in the world because I think I'm so important. It was really a snub and a fuck you to Scientology.
No, I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you did it. And I promise you, when I go home, I'm gonna. Oh, well, never mind. I was gonna say, send me an autographed one. But where would you autograph it?
It's a really, really great cause. That's awesome. Melissa Payne for $3 says, can you ask Mike about Leah's dad's videos?
Okay, well, really, this is something that Leah should speak to. And she has. Leah's dad is not really her dad. I mean, he's her biological dad, but he was an abusive father who they escaped from. And there's a lot to this story that I don't feel is appropriate for me to be speaking about. But let's just say there's a reason nobody heard from the guy and nobody even knew who he was until Scientology dug him up and gave him some money to make a video.
Enough said. You told the whole story right there.
Yeah, and then the last one here, Fight for $5 says, love you, Mike and Ron. Keep doing interviews and having fun.
Oh, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Kind words, and I appreciate it, and so does Mike. Mike, it was wonderful having you on, and boy, I'll tell you, this is something I would advise anybody who's watched this to view it again, especially for that beginning part that talks about what qualifies somebody as a religion. That was a real lesson in life and in the real world, you know, not some college professor, but somebody who's lived in life and is confronting things like that. You're going to see the actual truth of how they get away with it. Okay, so remember, next week is patrons only. So any of you patrons, we're going to send you an email so you can tune in. And anybody of you who aren't, I'd appreciate you joining and helping out on this endeavor. And especially, I want to thank Mike. Mike, this was a wonderful show, and I really appreciate you coming on. It's really, really nice of you.
You're very welcome, Ron.
Okay, so for all of us, to all of you, this is Life After Scientology. I'm Ron Miscavige. I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.